News team and your host, Randy Tobler.
Welcome into Wake Up Missouri on a Thursday morning. Want to give you a program alert. Senator Cindy O'Loughlin will be with us at 8:08, so set your clocks for that. Because as we talked about the other day with the special session coming up on Monday, Cindy has gone to the Facebook earlier this week, I think it was Monday, Tuesday, and said that she's in favor of the Kansas City stadium upgrade funding in the special session. So she'll be with us to talk about the special session, the agenda thereof. I'm sure that topic will come up. Wanted to let you know about that because obviously she has a lot of sway and one of the most powerful people in JC in terms of deciding how things turn out. John, that'll be interesting to see, some of the background on that, what led to her endorsement of that decision, because there's a lot of pushback from a lot of folks that say, hey, I'm not comfortable with public tax dollars going to billionaires. We'll be talking about that.
We're hearing a lot of positive things, though, from both sides of the aisle at the state capitol on this. And you wonder, when the smoke all clears, will the funding make it across the finish line?
Well, and to be fair, we like to look at both sides now. Can you play that song, that Joni Mitchell song from the 60s? We like to look at things really from many angles and try to unpack things. And Stephanie, there are arguments, even though we've talked about the Show Me Institute. We talked with Brenda Talent yesterday about how, it doesn't seem by Patrick Toohey's reckoning and others that look at this, that net from a metropolitan standpoint, maybe not a big, net positive, but maybe there's other sides of that story.
That's what's being argued.
Right. Yeah. To see.
There's lots of different things. I mean, there's, state pride. We talked earlier this week about your hatred for Kansas. But, the stadium, obviously, it does bring people here, especially, with all of the wins that the Chiefs have had, with like the Travis Taylor stuff. It does get people talking about Missouri, get people to the games, get people staying and eating and drinking. I just, I don't have the numbers for that, but I'm sure we will start to hear more about what that is. I think, and then you talk about the other events. I think we're a little over a year from kicking off FIFA. We talked about like Morgan Wallen concert, other concerts, events that you can then have at the stadium. Wasn't Taylor Swift at that stadium when she was in Kansas City? So there, it goes beyond the sports teams having a stadium that can hold some of these events. Ultimately, what that number is as far as economic development, like I said, I think we'll hopefully in the last 2 weeks someone's been putting that together, and we'll hear more about it.
Kurt Jefferson will join us. People may know and remember Kurt. He was a really legendary teacher at the college in Fulton there, and he is now in Louisville, but he's written a book that's actually in its category number 1 in the new releases on the war in Israel. And it's a timely thing because yesterday, as we were leaving the air, it was reported that Israel had knocked off one of the Hamas leaders. There being some saber rattling about the Iran story. Are they going to take out the nukes? If the talks with America don't go well with Iran, trying to get them denuked. So he'll join us at 7:08. There's a lot going on there. And Trump has a real dilemma with crazy Putin and, well, not so crazy Putin, because Putin's dumb like a fox. The evil despotic stop nothing to get power. He'll be with us at 7:08 to talk about that and the Israeli situation, foreign policy, national security. Elon Musk says he's done.
That makes me so sad.
Yeah. He's also frustrated that more wasn't done, that, there was so much pushback. And, of course, he's felt that personally with his companies, especially Tesla, not only with the people that own Teslas, but then personally, his Tesla dealerships were firebombed and cars were vandalized. So he's done. I think he may still have some kind of an oversight and have some interest peripherally, but his focus is singularly on SpaceX and Tesla now. Ron DeSantis is not happy with the fact that what Doge has done has not been really codified, and what's wrong with the Congress? Why haven't they taken that baton and really run with it? If you think of it as a relay race between the Doge part of the executive branch and Congress, you'd like to see those Republican-led branches working together. Here's what DeSantis had to say. He was pretty worked up the other day in Florida.
The amount of money that the federal government is spending, and yet we have a Republican Congress, and to this day we're in the end of May, past Memorial Day, and not 1 cent in DOGE cuts have been implemented by the Congress. That's one of the reasons why we need a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
So, I mean, I think when DeSantis speaks, people listen because his state has really prospered under his leadership. I think both culturally and economically. I mean, they've done good. He's been a good leader. Wasn't a very good candidate, John Marsh, but he's a good leader.
Well, in his comments that none of the DOGE cuts have been implemented, I think there are a whole bunch of former federal employees who might beg to differ with him a little bit.
That's true, yeah. I think what he means is that it hasn't been put into statute, into some kind of teeth for the long term, because all it takes is a Democrat to get in 28 and things are all reversed, open up the floodgates.
Sign a bunch of executive orders.
Right, and start hiring people and raising and growing the bureaucracy, right? That's, I think, the big concern. I guess Congress can change their mind, too, but it's a lot harder. You don't just do that with the stroke of a pen.
Yeah, I mean, we knew, obviously you can pick out certain programs like USAID and and for example, the Department of Education, but we knew you have to dig in and really change some of those laws. In Congress, we knew a lot of this would fall at the feet of Congress. The problem is they're so tied up with the big, beautiful bill, and that's taking up so much time. They really aren't getting a lot of other things done. And
in an interview, interesting in the Washington Post, very interesting interview with Musk at his home, where he feels, I think, the most. That's where he's the most thoughtful. He gets more philosophical in that SpaceX environment, that Starbase, Texas. Do you hear? There's an unofficial street in Starbase called Mar-a-Lago.
Yes.
I love it.
That's good.
But what he said was, quote, "The federal bureaucracy situation is much worse than I realized. I thought there were problems, but it sure is an uphill battle trying to improve things in D.C., to say the least." Now, when Elon Musk, a guy who probably has as much aspirational resilience, nothing stops this guy, right? So what? My rocket ship blows up, I'll build another, and this time it'll go higher. And if it blows up, I'll build another one until it doesn't blow up. I'm going to get it done because I have a dream. And there's nothing I can't surmount, right? When a guy like this sort of says, it sure is an uphill battle trying to improve things in D.C., to say that doesn't sound like Elon Musk, but it is.
It's interesting because I think it was all the way back in January or whenever this Doge thing really started getting hot that I was listening to a Reason podcast, and it was almost premonition because they were talking about, this has been tried before. We brought business people into the government and they always get so frustrated that eventually they just burn out and are like, screw this. Mm-hmm. And I thought, maybe not this time. But they gave several examples of when it's happened before, and Republicans have come in and said, we're going to, business-ify. We're going to, make government more like business.
Yeah.
And the folks who are used to operating at the pace of business, used to being surrounded by people who have motivations other than to just sit there and earn a paycheck, get frustrated. And I don't think we've seen the last of Elon. Certainly, even outside of government, he has a lot of influence. And certainly there are other people that kind of came along with him. Some of Trump's other picks are more business-minded. So I do think, I don't think all is lost here. I still am hoping for change. But certainly it's a different tenor today than it was last week.
And last evening, as I was wrapping the day up and thinking about things and sort of zooming out on what happened yesterday, you have Musk. I'm not saying he has a resigned tenor to his talk here, and more of this interview is really interesting. But, he said, I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decreases it, and undermines the work the Doge team is doing. Then the court ruling from this federal trade court comes down, which essentially nukes all of the 10% tariffs, the Canada, Mexico, China special tariffs. It does not vacate, that's the right legal word, right? It doesn't vacate the tariffs on sectors like aluminum and steel and autos. And according to a CNBC article, we can unpack it a little bit more as the show goes on. There are some other rules in the Federal Trade Act of 74 that can be used, some other sections that he might be able to use. But they said that using...
Ultimately, it goes back to Congress.
Yeah.
Which isn't good for us.
Well, I mean, and I guess what I'm getting at is, man, everyone had I think everyone in MAGA world, I think most of the people listening, most of our WUM family are like, yeah, finally something's going to get done. Finally, we've got a disruptor for all the right reasons, in all the right ways, going to get her done. And one after another, whether it's how many now? Are we at 100 lawsuits against executive orders?
More than that, I'm pretty sure.
And now the federal courts, both the district courts and now this sort of obscure Manhattan court, federal trade court.
The Court of International Trade, a 3-judge panel.
Yeah. Well,
I've not heard of it.
I don't know. They probably get their robes from Temu. I don't know. It's just like, man, live, all this enthusiasm, and we were going to come in and just change things and put this country on a better course, and like one after another, you just sort of at one point go, man, I'm running out of energy to keep fighting because it's like climbing up the down escalator.
Does Trump ever run out of energy, though?
He doesn't.
I think he's going to find a way, but I mean, you kind of bring up a good point, whether it be Elon or Trump, like although you can have like a really inspirational leader and they can really drive the change, it takes more than just them to get some of this stuff done. And unless we're all on the same team, and so whether you're talking about the armies of bureaucrats who don't want the change or congressional members who can't agree on much of anything, without those two groups of people on the team, it makes it really hard.
Yeah, I mean, he has his small band of brothers, and sisters that are there around the cabinet, and they want to get great things done. But like you say, I mean, yeah, throughout history, small armies have, defeated legions and bigger armies, but I don't know. It's an uphill battle. I think the people are behind him. Unfortunately, the laws tend to just thwart a lot, and the laws are being used to do a lot to undermine the Doge and the Trump efforts, and for that matter, the fiscal hawks in Congress, and it goes on and on and on.
It doesn't seem like Trump's slowing down. I did check the number. Trump's at 152 executive orders in less than half a year. Joe Biden signed just 160 in 4 years.
But he was only conscious half the time.
Well, we had the auto pen.
You're right. All right, let's head to the Daily DC Rundown when we come back. Don't forget, Senator Cindy O'Loughlin at 8:08. And at 7:08, we're talking foreign policy, Ukraine, Israel, the whole works. Don't miss any of it here on Wake Up Missouri.
You're listening to
It's time for the Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell. What's happening?
Well, we had already mentioned yesterday a federal trade court blocked Trump's tariffs. It's a court you probably never heard of called the Court of International Trade. It's a 3-judge panel. They essentially said that the authority that Trump was citing to allow him to implement many of these tariffs doesn't actually give him the power to do that. They said Congress can't delegate their tariff power, and so Congress is going to have to step in. That really, it shot the markets up yesterday after the market closed. Futures were up pretty high. I know markets overseas were responding positively, so we'll have a look at the futures at 825 for you. I am adding, we were talking about, I think the Man Dictionary and like lexicons yesterday, and I have 2 new words to add to my lexicon. One, Trump was not too happy about yesterday. The taco trade is what the Wall Street Journal is referring to a lot of his tariffs as, and he learned this in real time on live TV, I think, or anyway, it was recorded. He is not pleased. So taco stands for Trump always chickens out, and this whole, you're getting a tariff and then, we're going to press pause, and then we're putting it back on, and then we're pressing pause. Trump did not like that, and I'm sure he hasn't fully responded yet. He was I think he's usually not caught off guard. I think he was caught a little bit off guard, but I'm sure we will see a Truth Social about that. I'm also learning more about, what is this word? Golden shares. Have you heard this before? I should have probably known what this was. Well, Trump is looking at this deal to fix this Nippon Steel takeover of U.S. Steel. And apparently, it's being reported that the U.S. government could receive, quote, a golden share as a condition for approving this partnership. Apparently, golden shares in the past have only been issued to public companies where we're actually like bailing them out, like GM and Chrysler. So this is a special class, or a class of voting stock with special voting rights that would essentially give the U.S. government veto power over big company decisions. But the details aren't fully public yet, so...
Yeah, there's this whole flap over Nissan Steel.
Yeah.
Right? No, Nippon Steel.
Correct.
Japanese steel company buying U.S. Steel, but not really. The legislator in the area said it's a partnership, but then others, the headline says it's acquired.
But it would need to be checked off on by the government. It has been thwarted so far. So what will that deal ultimately look like? We will be getting more details, I'm sure, in the near future. Also on vaccine news, it was reported pretty widely earlier this week that the FDA is no longer recommending the COVID vaccine for pregnant women and children. But in other vaccine news, the Department of Health and Human Services yesterday canceled a major contract with Moderna to fund the development of a vaccine for the bird flu, citing some of the information that RFK has been putting out about vaccines. So. Randy looks none too pleased.
Well, I don't know. I'm befuddled. There's some scientific information that people ought to look at when they make that decision. We can talk about that later.
On the international front, Netanyahu announced yesterday that Israeli forces killed a Hamas leader in Gaza, and so big news there. And as well, we're getting some news that there might be peace talks. Russia has proposed a second round of peace talks with Ukraine. That is scheduled for next Monday in Istanbul. Zelensky hasn't agreed to that yet, and they're thinking it's just a way to kind of tamp down all of the tempers from Trump right now. So if they will actually, because, they had a meeting, and was it Putin was the only one that showed up? No, Putin didn't show up. Zelensky showed up.
Zelensky showed up, but his person did,
Right.
Yeah.
So will they come to the table next Monday? That is the question. 2 people that are coming to the table today, the president and the vice president, are having lunch today after the president receives his intelligence briefing. You should know.
I think Putin is playing Trump and Zelensky like a violin. He really is. The guy
Meanwhile, seizing more territory.
That's right. He just keeps rolling forward and it's a war of attrition, and he has more to attrite than Zelensky. When we come back, slang-o-matic. Welcome back to Wake Up Missouri. It's 6:35, 7:08. We're talking some foreign policy. Lots going on overseas in the Middle East, Ukraine, Russia, Iran. It's just all over the place. And, we were talking about Elon Musk, Stephanie, John, Drake. And I would say the kind of stuff that he's doing is just far out, wouldn't you? I mean, like he's lit, I'd say it's fire, babe. I mean, it's just awesome.
Is it? Do we have AI Randy on the show today? Are you typing something in Chat GPT?
My daughter-in-law, our son's wife, has the wickedest sense of humor, and she just has a wacky, funny. She could do stand-up. I mean, she's really funny. She sends Helene and I each, if you're watching on Facebook, she sends us this slang-o-matic, the generational translator.
Oh my gosh.
And it says,
cool.
You turn the wheel to translate between slang terms popularized by boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. Notice, it's got like a warning, like on a cigarette package. Notice cross-generational disputes that result from the use of this product should be adjudicated by whichever Gen Alpha big brain is pulling up first. So that'll have to be the next generation of this, right? They'll have to do
that is so cute.
Gen Alpha. Okay, so let's see. Now, John, when you were dating your lovely wife, your much better half, and you first saw her off in the distance and your eyes met, and then you went back and you told the guys at the radio station, oh, man, she's such a good looker. She's a real, what would you say, a fox, right? Yeah, boomer.
Okay.
You'd say a fox.
Sure.
What would a Gen Xer say?
The goat.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Babe is what Slang-O-Matic says. Babe.
Okay.
Now, you're a millennial.
I am a millennial.
What would you want to be called if someone gazed at you across the room at the singles bar?
I think people used hot.
Hottie.
Yeah.
Yeah, hottie.
There you go.
And what would Drake call that girl? Drake frequently has, we talk about this frequently with Drake.
I got to guess. Go, Drake.
Yeah, please don't say baddie.
That's what I was going to guess.
Yeah.
No, this is really... So what John would call a fox, Gen X would call babe. Stephanie would like to be called a hottie as a millennial herself. And the emoji is the two hearts. They have emojis to match here.
Yes.
They have, when it's appropriate, there's a little emoji that matches. So it's the smiley face with the two heart eyes. Gen Z calls a good-looking gal a snack.
Yep.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's true.
I'd never heard that before.
That's like a new healthy eating mantra. You've not heard that?
No.
Do you want to eat a snack or be a snack? That's what they say. Like, that's their thing. They're like being cute. So anytime you're trying to eat a snack, remind yourself of that.
Once in a while, our intrepid news team, John, Brian, Mike, Don, they come up with an exclusive. They come up with a story that is, they have, a corner on this story. And you call it, what do you call that? When you have...
A scoop.
The scoop. You know what Gen X calls it? The 411.
Okay.
Yeah. How about millennials? I've never heard this one.
I know what Drake's generation calls this.
My daughters taught me what Gen Z calls
I know
it,
that
even though
one.
they're late millennials.
Is it a drink?
The deets.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
The deets.
That's
I've never
fair.
heard that.
Like
the
details.
Oh, the details. Oh, okay.
the
Yeah.
deets.
And Gen Z calls it the tea.
Yeah, I knew that.
Once
The
in a
T
while.
or they'll use the IYKYK thing on you too if they're
What?
If
in
you
the
know,
know.
you know.
Oh, I hadn't heard that one. Okay. The tea. Yeah, once in a while the girls will say, hey, someone we went to school with, let's have
the
some tea.
Yeah.
I'm going to pour some tea. I'm like, what are you talking about? Okay. Now, when someone wants to eat something out of the refrigerator that's been there for a week and it's a leftover, John calls that...
I would call that Randy's lunch generally.
John would call it gross. Oh, that's gross. What would Gen X call it? A variation on that.
Grody.
Yeah,
You got
grody.
it. You got it. And it's got the emoji is the puke emoji.
Of course. When I watch you eat things out of the radio station fridge.
Oh, I love it. It's great.
It gives me the puke emoji feel.
I've got an immune system that's like iron. Millennial calls it
I don't identify with my generation. Apparently.
nasty.
Oh, yeah,
nasty.
that's fair.
Yeah. Gen Z, this is actually a throwback to an older term. Vile.
That's fair.
Is that right? You called vile?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Okay. Now, when someone says, hey, you really nailed it there, I think that's actually one of these, but someone says, hey, no bull. Boomers would say, that's no bull. Gen X would say, no joke. How about millennials?
I don't know. I'd be like,
no lie.
Hashtag backs.
No lie.
Okay.
Gen Z says, no cap. Have you heard of that?
No cap, yeah.
No cap? What? No cap?
No cap.
What about big
yeah,
yikes?
You capping.
What about big yikes? That's another Gen Z term.
Let's see if I can find that. I have to.
You have to move your wheel.
So
funny.
This is so funny. In case you're just joining us, I was given by my quirky but great sense of humor daughter-in-law, Allie girl, we call her. Her name's Alexis. We call her Allie. And she teaches at a charter school in D.C. area.
So she probably needs this too, right?
Yeah, she teaches English as second language.
My kids are constantly coming up with new words, and I'm like,
oh,
I don't
boomers.
know
What if
this means.
Okay, so the boss comes in and says, hey, now you got to start leading off with, the news of Tucumcari, New Mexico every day. I'd come into Stephanie, I'd say, it really has me ticked off. That's what the boomer would say. It's got me ticked off. What would millennial say?
Pissed off.
Actually, Gen X.
Oh, maybe I'm old.
But you're an older millennial.
Yeah, I am.
You're an earlier millennial.
Elder millennial.
I should never use the word older with Steph.
Elder
never.
millennial is the official term, yes.
Millennials would say salty.
Oh,
that's really salty.
Yeah, that's the newer millennial thing, but yeah.
Yeah, and Gen Z, big mad.
Gen Z? I thought Gen Z was salty.
Big mad.
Big mad.
Big mad. This is fun. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, here's the last one that we'll do for today. When you come up, like when Stephanie we talk about a legal thing, and it's just like you say, Stephanie, she got it. She really did a great job. She
nailed it.
You got it. That's the boomer. She nailed it. Gen X.
I don't know.
Crushed it. You crushed it.
That's fair.
Millennial.
I would say we say crushed it a lot.
Killed it.
Same
thing.
Okay.
And you Gen Zers, you guys are.
I got it. I know
you're
this
eating
one.
your parents' gummies.
I know this one.
I've never come
Greg
up with
sent
these.
it to me yesterday
What
about
is
my
it?
outfit.
Gen Z.
Slade.
What?
It's Slade.
Slade? No, 8.
Oh, 8. Okay,
yeah,
that's
8
fair.
with no crumbs. Yeah,
or cook.
You ate it.
Yeah,
and,
cook.
Let me cook.
And apparently, the emoji for that is the biceps, the arm, the biceps. I didn't think about that. I also think of strong with the arm. Okay, so that's the Slang-O-Matic generational translator. There's a few more there. And it says, asterisk, you can use Slang-O-Matic to navigate your cross-generational chat and look cool in front of your grandchildren. I'm going to try to work on this. This is like learning a new language.
Try to use any of those words with my kids. They're like, they just shake their head. They're like, Mom, no.
I roll.
Mm-hmm.
The one I haven't seen on here is, and I'd be interested in the gathering here, and 573-874-9390 if you want to weigh in on this. What about cool? Like that's, I don't know, maybe that is on here. I haven't seen it yet, but what about cool?
Now they would say, I think between millennials and Gen Z, they'd say fire.
Or bussin'.
Lit.
Bussin', lit, yeah.
Lit, oh. Yeah, there's more in here. We'll go through some of these maybe tomorrow on Feel Good Friday. Anyway, 573. I tried it. What about hip? I mean,
no one says that.
Remember, it's hip to be square? Remember that from
Huey Lewis and the
Huey
News.
Lewis and the News.
That's it.
It's a great. What do you say now if you're going to be hip? What is the equivalent of hip for Gen
Corey
Z?
is saying you have the Riz. I don't think that was in response to hip, but that's like a really popular term amongst the youngsters.
Yeah. What's the other one? Swag. I learned swag. Swag used to be.
Swag is like millennial. Riz is Gen Z.
Dope.
That used to be what we smelled building model airplanes.
There you go.
But swag used to be
or from
something.
the guys in the frat house down the street.
Isn't swag like on a lampshade? If you got a hanging lamp, you got a swag kind of a lamp?
That's like a curtain, but no,
it's like
swagger. Yeah. And Riz
swagger.
Riz is shortened of charisma.
Gen Z says drip, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, to describe outfits, yeah.
And
drip?
Drip straight up fire.
Like big necklaces, right? That's like your drip.
Yeah, that's
if you're drip, I have to do a test on you to check for
your drip.
infections.
It's like it's a noun. It's not like an adjective.
Oh.
Now we're going to have a grammar lesson.
Yeah, but for like bling and all that kind of stuff, they call it ice. Like that's what the diamond chains and all that.
Corey says you have the Riz. That's right. Philip says,
how about skibbity?
John, I'm turning your mic off for the rest of the show.
The thing, they say like alpha is good, which that makes sense to me because it's like the first in the alphabet. So like alpha, but then they like sigma was also good, and I never quite understood that one. Drake, can you explain?
People are stupid. That's my best explanation. I'm sorry. If someone says that out loud, like in person, they should probably get rocked in their face.
Oh, that's funny. All right. Well, we had a little fun with that. It is, and you do feel like a total idiot sometimes when you're around younger people and you you hear those terms thrown out, and then it's worse because you sort of have that bewildered deer in the headlights look.
Is that good or bad? Like, did they just insult me?
I know.
Or did they?
That's the one thing. At first you're bewildered and you feel you've really left out. But then when you say a word and you sort of get mocked or laughed, it's very demeaning. It hurts.
And some of the words can be used in like both ways. And I recently, like slay, I think is usually a good thing, but like it can be used in a pejorative way. And so it's hard sometimes to know which are.
Like if you're Jim Comey and you use slay, probably shouldn't do that.
No, you
especially
should not.
After the beach post.
I mean, I haven't seen slay spelled out in seashells yet.
That's right.
Stay tuned. Especially when you're in front of the judge in the courtroom and you tell him that was gas. Right, Steph?
Let's talk a little more about this new day trading strategy about buying tacos. What does that mean? You day traders out there trying to figure out the market, you want to listen up at 6:52 when we come back. On Wake Up Missouri, and at 7:08, we're talking foreign policy with Kurt Jefferson, just out with a new book on the War of Israel. Stay tuned.
This is Wake Up Missouri.
Hey, welcome back into Wake Up Missouri, 573-874-9390. We're going to crush it this segment on day trading.
We're going to have to call a pineapple on you for...
Oh, no pineapples.
For using too much Gen Z slang.
So the other day, yesterday, I guess, in his little White House impromptu Oval Office presser, Trump, it was very interesting. Trump was asked about this taco thing. You talked about it a little bit in the Daily DC Rundown. So traders are seriously, there are people looking at the markets and the way they react to Donald Trump's actions and the result of those actions, the consequences of those, and that's what they're based. That's a new trading strategy called taco. Trump always chickens out.
And it was almost like, okay, so have you ever been in the workplace and like behind someone's back, everyone has a nickname for that person and it's not very nice. Yeah. And it's not just like jerk, but it's like specific to that person. Right. It was almost like when it got said out loud, like if you accidentally said it in front of that person's face and everyone's like, shh, and everyone else knows. And it's a term that everyone but Trump appeared to know.
Yeah, and it was sort of weird.
Caught off guard.
It really did catch him off guard. And so he did address it, but
called the reporter nasty.
He wasn't happy about it. Here's a little bit of that.
Out. Here's how you responded.
You ask a nasty question like that. It's called negotiation.
So
and nasty was one of our words, right?
Yeah,
right in
nasty.
Line with
So what they're talking about with this, and it's really interesting because if you think about it, I mean, we've joked about it, not so much. I mean, we've reported on what happens. The reality is, when Trump put in a tariff, then the market, especially like if it's a tech tariff against iPhones or something, okay, Apple plunges, right? Well, then it's almost predictable now that within a day or two or five, he's going to pull back on that, and then the stock surges. So everyone buys on the dip. They wait for the surge, which is inevitable, and they're making money on that spread.
And I'm a sucker for a Business Bro podcast. I listen to a lot of them. I like them. And they were just chatting this week, actually, and saying, like, earnings reports, schmurnings reports. Like, that's what used to drive the market. And, like, now, very rarely do you see major, the volatility is not due to earnings. It's not due to other, it's like almost, at least over the last 2 months, it's been almost solely dictated by Trump's tariff announcements.
Well, and, we're getting a little ahead of the morning bell at 8:25, the market report. But, yesterday, as soon as the tariffs were vacated by that federal international trade court, right? It's weird. I don't know. It's not. Is it a federal court or is it?
It's a federal court.
Okay.
And there's lots of these like specialized courts. I will say I don't practice in federal.
Like administrative courts, sort of? Yeah,
there's one that just does, I forget the name of it, that just does like rails to trails, and it's located in D.C. and it's kind of like this special 3-judge panel. I mean, you think about it, there's we talk about, quote unquote courts, but like even here in Missouri, you've got the Public Service Commission who handles all the utility stuff. You've got the State Tax Commission who handles, and they're like,
family courts
now
too.
These are, but like, so those are administrative bodies, which this is an actual court.
This is actual court.
But there are multiple types of these types of specialized
created
courts.
by Congress?
Oh, I would assume.
So this
like in Missouri with the Department of Labor and their appeals judges, which sort of stand alone from the actual judicial system, right?
I think this is an actual court as opposed to an administrative body, but like and I don't know. I'm not an expert on federal courts, but it's not when we usually you hear in the news federal courts and you're talking about lower court, like what you traditionally assume about federal courts. This was not that.
And this isn't appealable, or is it appealable?
It is appealable, and Trump actually, his team has already said or like filed a notice that they're going to appeal. It will go to the Supreme Court, so it does sit within the court system.
It doesn't go to the appellate court. It goes right to the Supreme Court. Or do we know?
Oh, I don't know where it goes first, but I think the speculation is that it ends up at the Supreme Court.
Well, economists are saying that this taco trading is unprecedented. It was always taken as a given that when the president spoke on Monday, he'd likely still mean it on Tuesday. No longer true, according to a University of Michigan economist.
Straight from the art of the deal.
Yeah, I'm telling you. What's predictable is he's unpredictable, but he's predictable. Back with Kurt Jefferson, Foreign Policy in 5. Trump. You don't sleep, right?
Thank you, Randy. It's great to be with you, and greetings from the Derby City.
I have to say now, Dr. Jefferson is I call him our academic expatriate because he is a legendary teacher, multiply awarded, and professor at Westminster College here until he fled the area here. But that's okay. We're glad that you're with us remotely, Kurt. This is a timely book, The Wars of Israel, and I think a lot of us in America are looking at all of the spinoffs, both domestically with what it's doing to our college campuses or universities and all of the uproar. We saw the tragic and brutal execution of that beautiful young the Israel embassy staffers last week. So it has ramifications domestically, certainly a tinderbox in that area. How do you assess what's going on over there right now? And, is there a chance of a long-term peace at all?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think just based on some of the research I've done, it is a fairly chaotic situation trying to rein in Hamas. This is now the longest war in the history of the state of Israel since their first war in 1948-49 at the start of the country on May 14, 1948. But this is a situation where you have some domestic discord politically. We can relate to that in the United States prior to Trump coming in to power and for the second time. And then you have the situation where they've replaced recently the Shin Bet leader, and Shin Bet is their FBI, and that person is responsible to the president, just like in our system. And so that has caused some friction between left and right in Israel. And then, of course, you have the new incursion that's beginning with the Israel Defense Forces, the military, trying to lock down Gaza, and think they've locked down about 50% of it, pushing folks more to the north. Hamas still has a foothold in the north, and they've started this Israel-American food distribution project, 840,000 meals to Gazans, but you still have the discussion about whether they're going to go in and try to literally wipe out Hamas and get them completely out. And there's division in Israel over that politically amongst the intelligentsia and the leadership. And Netanyahu, of course, is also on trial and will be defending himself in cross-examination, I think, in the next week or two, which is moderately insane or crazy to see that happening. And he may be trying to get exempted from that by the leader of the Shin Bet in the next few days. So we'll see what all transpires with that.
Talk to us about how the war in Gaza compares with, Israel's invasion of Lebanon back in the day and even the Yom Kippur War, how it's being prosecuted.
Yeah, and I go into this in my book in quite a bit of detail. And I go through all 18 wars by my calculation that Israel's fought since 1948. And that's a good question. What normally happens in a war that the IDF fights is they go in, usually it's a semi-police action, semi-preventative action to try to keep terrorism from spreading down into their borders. But what transpires is anywhere from a week-long to about a 6-week-long set of operations. And this is pretty much the standard. If you look at 1973 that you just mentioned, the Yom Kippur War, you're talking about a 17-day war. The 1967 war was a 6-day war, literally. And so most of their wars are very short. But the reason that they're short is the P5 states of the Security Council of the UN, including the United States, often step in and say, okay, you're using disproportionate force or overwhelming force. Enough is enough. We don't want to see this go further. And the Lebanon wars and the famous first one in 1982 is a good example where Israel went all the way up to Beirut, encircled the city, was close to taking the capital, then backed off because they have a policy of, hey, we're not going to take any Arab capitals. So these kind of wars can be very tenuous, but you're also talking about a nation state that's also concerned about its own survival, and you have all the Holocaust and all the other historical situation that they're taking into account. And that sounds like an overstatement. It really isn't. It's just that you're talking about a nation of 10 million people with 50 or 75, 100 million surrounding Arabs of these countries surrounding them, and they're trying to make sure that they can maintain their security.
We're talking with Kurt Jefferson, author of The Wars of Israel, Politics, Economics, and Security Before October 7th and Beyond. Are you having much strife on the campus there in Spalding? Do you see anything, even in a micro sense, of the kind of protest we see at some of the northeastern Ivy League colleges?
No, it's interesting. We've not had any. We're a very small, we're a small private Catholic institution right in the heart of the city in Louisville, and we haven't had any protests. But about a mile and a half south of us, down by Churchill Downs, is the University of Louisville, which is a good-sized, more like a Mizzou. It's 25,000 students, and they've had some protesting. But I think here, because of the nature of the transition from Biden to Trump, some of the university presidents are starting to get the message that you can't let unfettered pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas protesting go on and on and on, or you're going to run the risk of what we're seeing with Harvard and some of these other schools losing their federal dollars and all that. So it has been more measured. And I do know, just talking with folks at the University of Louisville, that, they now have folks who talk to students about, hey, here's what free speech is. Here's what you're allowed to do, but you're not allowed to barricade yourself inside the president's office and these kind of things. It's a very different world from even this protests of the Vietnam era on college campuses and that kind of thing. But it isn't, in some ways, to your last point, Randy, it's not radically different in that some of the schools, of course, as we've seen, are doubling down on some of this, not schools, the protesters. So we'll continue to see that. And I talk about the anti-Semitic protests and some of these other things in my book a little bit about the increasing number of these around the country. So, and you mentioned the horrible assassination of this couple last week in Washington who worked for the Israeli embassy.
I think all of our hearts go out to the really truly innocent people in Gaza that have become caught in the middle of this conflict, and we hear about the food shortages and certainly the errant missiles or the collateral damage. I don't think anyone, probably even hardcore Jews with relatives in Israel, would say that, hey, their hearts don't go out for kids that are caught in the crossfire. But that said, in the minds of these young skulls full of mush in some of these violent protests we've seen, they get caught up in the emotion and the drama of it. And so I guess my question for you, Kurt Jefferson, who is the Dean of Graduate Education at a college, an author of the book on Israel, and an all-around great person. I know Kurt personally, ladies and gentlemen. Many people are sending their kids off to school here in just a couple of months. They're going to set up shop in a school, some of them in the very schools that we're talking about in the Northeast, some not. What would be your advice for kids who are persuadable? That's the nature of that environment and that age. So that they can at least, what would you tell the parents to give those kids as part of their care package, as maybe their birthday present if they're having a birthday, or their going away package, maybe over the Christmas holiday, other than your book? I mean, what can be done to try to tell these kids, like, hey, I get it, you're going to hear different opinions, but try to learn and be educated before you just get caught up in the drama? Because a lot of parents are going to be struggling with that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think as a political scientist, I always viewed my role as educating students about their rights as citizens and their obligations as citizens in a democracy. And we really cherish, especially in journalism, what you all are doing actively. We cherish the First Amendment, and we believe it protects freedom of speech. I'm a tenured professor. Tenure was actually instituted in 1940 to protect the freedom of speech of professors, not as a longevity, you get your job for life, even though it's morphed into that. It's more about, hey, we need to have an unfettered discussion and debate without trying to censor people. Mm-hmm. And I would tell students, hey, you need to make sure you're discerning. You realize, what is the story under the story, and that's what my book tries to do. I remember my good colleague, Sam Goodfellow at Westminster College, was a historian there, and he'd always say, we need to tell the story behind the story. And that's exactly what you're doing, Randy, and what your colleagues are doing there is trying to get deeper than just what you're reading from the mainstream media or other media outlets or Twitter or whatever. So that's one thing. The other thing I did want to say about the Arabs, the Gazans, the Palestinians is, half of all Jews in Israel today are what they call Mizrahi Jews. These are Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. A lot of them are Arab Jews. They're ethnically Arab, were converted to Judaism. Their families were 600 years ago. So when you see in Israel today, there are a lot of Jews who are not historically European Jews. So that's something that, certainly ethnically they have connection to the Gazan, Arabs and Muslims in that regard. So I agree with you 100%. Nobody's saying they want to see the whole population destroyed. Innocent people are under the boot of a very bad terrorist regime there, and so that is something that I think everybody, including the President of the United States and the last President of the United States, were trying to figure out how to solve this mess.
Well, there's a little bit of the story behind the story, ladies and gentlemen, and if you want to know more, why don't you pick up the book, The Wars of Israel, by our guest, Kurt W. Jefferson, former Westminster College professor, now at Spalding University. Hey, we thank you so much for being with us, Kurt. We'll be in touch more because there's certainly a lot more to talk about. We're out of time, and I wish we weren't. Hey, thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dr. Tobler. As always, great talking with you all. Have a good day.
Did you know that a lot of the Jews in Israel were actually converted Arabs from North Africa? I didn't know that.
Call them Sabras.
Wow. Interesting.
Which are the Jews born in Israel.
That's right, yeah. Hey, we'll be back and talk about making Missouri healthy again at 7:24. Stay tuned.
You're listening to
wanted to talk a little bit about the story behind the story on the CDC taking the COVID vaccine booster off the recommended list for healthy kids. It was only ever approved for children over 6 months of age, and healthy pregnant women. First of all, notice they said healthy, which means they still think that there's, despite, Kennedy and many people's aversion to the COVID vaccines, they must still recognize that if a person's not healthy, it may be something to think about and have a discussion with your doctor. I don't think we should throw this baby out with the bathwater. I know that's going to have a lot of you worked up potentially, but if you look at the science behind it, it's true that, especially in the first 6 months of life, kids are pretty much immunologically naked, and they depend on the immunity they get from their moms. That's why we recommend the pertussis, the whooping cough vaccine given.
Is that the Tdap?
Yeah, it's part of the Tdap, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one where I thought I was going to get like a third ear or something.
No.
Yeah, because
That's an easy one. Yeah.
No, but as a healthy adult, you're only supposed to get it, a booster like one every 10 years?
Yeah,
but then when you're pregnant, you have to get it.
Roughly
because it passes to the baby.
32 weeks. You want to get it before then because it takes a while for you to get your immunity and it passes through the placenta to the baby.
Well, yeah, and I think right before I got pregnant with my oldest, I got my booster, and so I ended up with 4 of those. You're supposed to get one every 10 years, and I think I had 4 in like 7 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, surely I'm like,
it's an interesting comment. For the most part, with most vaccines, if you get a booster before the longest interval that it's recommended at. Remember when they say get a Tdap, a tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis.
I can
3 in
step
1.
on all the rusty nails.
They say get that one at least every 10 years, but it's the at least. If you get one sooner than that, it's not going to hurt. I still maintain to this day, and I think the data supports this as a detour here. The big mistake with the COVID vaccines was giving it too soon, giving it one and then 3 to 4 weeks later giving another for that initial series. I think that was a mistake.
I mean, there were a lot of mistakes. I'd be hard pressed to order them in the number of mistakes.
I don't know about that. I mean, I think that really did save lives. It also caused some complications in people. I don't think we were as selective in that as we could have been. And I don't think the science was as crisp and precise as it could have been.
Well, remember the panic at the time.
Well, and I think if you're talking about the biggest mistake, the mandates, like firing people for not getting it and then requiring it for travel.
Yeah, no
a
doubt.
lot of us felt like we didn't have a choice.
On the public policy side, I think so. I still think it was one of the most remarkable scientific advances in so little time as we've ever seen. And does it need to be? I liken it to rocket ships exploding in space with Elon Musk, right?
Except
people.
This was people. Except there aren't people on the
I get it. But what I'm saying is
Gonna get me fired up.
Well, it doesn't take much to get you fired up on this issue. I understand. But when they looked at the hospitalization rates, when they looked at the vaccination rates of kids that were hospitalized, infants under 6 months of age, they found out that, as vaccinations increased in women, they found that Drake, what? Drake's waving his hand.
Yeah,
madly.
no, we're about to go out, and I wanted to tell my personal story. Yeah. I mean, this was all under the mandate of Anthony Fauci, the same guy who said you could get AIDS by sharing cereal with your brother.
Yeah.
Like, the credibility is not there for everything that happened, and I'm going to stop talking because we're out of time.
Well, after this news, I'm just thankful I didn't give it to my kids, and there was a lot of pressure for me to do it. And
I'll just say that women who don't get vaccinated or haven't been vaccinated or haven't had COVID probably have their kids at some risk of being hospitalized in the first 6 months. Small, but there. That's it.
Has America been fair to Donald Trump?
unpack, even with the very effective long-term vaccines like MMR and, almost all of them. There's some small identifiable risk associated with the vaccine. I mean, yeah, you can get a little soreness at the site of the vaccine or a fever. I'm talking about more than that. Guillain-Barré is the one we think of a lot with things like the flu vaccine, which can be a devastating, paralyzing, usually temporary, but sometimes not, a complication. And maybe that happens, let's just for argument's sake, say 1 in 100,000. But
I don't think it's very complicated. I think it
is very complicated. The science is very complicated, and so is the personal decision making.
I get to do what I want. I think that's the answer.
And you know what? I get that. But Drake and I, 573-874-9390, this is a very interesting decision. You have health insurance, right?
No.
You don't have, okay. You have the means to pay for your health care, right?
Correct.
Okay. You're not on government-assisted health care.
I'm not.
Okay. Now that over 60%, it's close to 2/3 of the health care dollar is now paid by the government, by taxpayers. Right? By we the people. It could be fairly argued, couldn't it be, that especially with an effective vaccine that's very safe, let's take influenza vaccine for one.
Another vaccine I don't take.
Mm-hmm. How about shingles vaccine for another?
I'm not old enough.
Okay. I've seen patients that absolutely had to quit their job, went on Social Security disability, constantly access the healthcare system, emergency room visits for pain management.
From shingles. I plan to take the shingles vaccine. I know people who.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, it's sort of like motorcycle helmet laws and others. The more
survival of the fittest.
Isn't it fair to say though that the more and more that you give the responsibility for taking care of the consequences of your decisions to the government. In other words, if I don't wear a helmet and I'm then disabled, and now I'm on government assistance, and I'm getting government-paid health care because I've got Medicare on Social Security disability. And if there was something I could have done to radically reduce the risk of me being in that situation, at some point, doesn't the government and we the people, don't we at some point have some right to say, if I'm going to pay for the consequences of your decision, your liberty that resulted in consequences that now everyone else has to pay for, doesn't that everyone else have someone on the front end to say, no, we're going to manage your behavior? It's like the SNAP benefits. Is there anyone that would really believe that SNAP benefits should be buying, orange juice, what's it called? The space age stuff. What was it called? That was basically orange flavored Tang. Should we allow people on SNAP benefits to buy Tang instead of real orange juice, for instance? Should we allow them to buy Fruit Loops instead of you can only buy, oranges and, whole grain toast for breakfast, right?
Should we force them to get the Ozempic shot?
I think we have some right.
And we being is the government. I think you're saying we as the taxpayer, but I don't know that we should.
I think you give up some degree of your agency if you expect your liberties to be accounted for with someone else's money.
So then the law would be if you're riding a motorcycle without a helmet and you get injured, then you can't go on government assistance. Then we need a whole nother state bureaucracy to determine whether it was your fault or whether it was.
That was a big debate when they talked about the helmet law in Missouri.
Do you dispute that seatbelts and helmets severely reduce the risk of having a fatal or a long-term disabling injury? There's no dispute about that science.
Yeah, but
you reduce the risk. You can never eliminate the risk, though you attorneys think you can with enough verbiage in a contract. But you can't eliminate the risk.
And I also don't dispute that I'm smarter than most people, so I wear my seatbelt and I don't get on a motorcycle. Period. I manage those risks as best as I can, but I get it. I get where you're coming from. There is an argument for. We all end up paying for other people's stupid decisions.
Who let Socialist Randy on the radio? See, all these people in Wake Up Missouri family, you all don't understand how I'm complimenting you here. Most libertarian-oriented conservatives, like I think most of the Wake Up family, are personally very responsible. There's a buttload of people in this country that are not personally responsible. We report on them every day.
Which generation is buttload?
Everyone. I've had it goes. It's human nature.
In the lexicon.
I don't know. That's a good one, isn't it? The point is that there's personal responsibility involved. And I think we've come to a point in this country where a lot of people want to have personal responsibility. They want to have all the liberties without any accountability.
That's fair.
Okay. Well, when it comes to health care, I'm telling you, there are a lot of things that we do to ourselves that we then ask other people to pay for, right? You smoke 2 packs a day for your whole life, and then you're on Medicare and you get a lung cancer and it's costing buku bucks. Does anyone think that you couldn't radically reduce your risk of lung cancer by not smoking? I mean, look, I've got too much weight on me, right? I wouldn't expect the government to pay if I have a premature stroke or a heart attack. That's Randy's problem. Randy should pay for that. Someone who runs a marathon every other week, eats totally healthily, and does everything. Now, if they get a brain cancer, I think I may be willing as a citizen to pay for that.
Who makes that determination? I mean, think about the armies of lawyers and experts and government bureaucrats that you'd have to, involve to decide whether it was self-imposed or not.
You're in a profession that believes that a group of people can make a wise and perfect decision by a vote of 5/4. That's your profession. You agree to the fact that certain groups of people called courts are so wise that they can make life-altering decisions. They can put people in prison.
I don't think by being a lawyer I have committed to the fact that every decision the court makes is wise.
No, but you are part of a system that recognizes the august wisdom of that group of people.
I'm just saying the system that you're describing it is equally expensive. Like there's not a way to implement that in a way that doesn't. I think your argument is that it costs too much to take care of people who make stupid decisions, and I'm saying just the implementing some sort of program that decides whether your decision was stupid enough that you should be liable for it is also a costly policy program.
You're getting around to where I'm hoping we can all agree that because these arguments are deep and wide and contentious, wouldn't it be better if those social welfare programs just didn't exist? They just shouldn't exist. They just shouldn't exist because they become a hammock for people. And there's ways to support people through things like ministerial alliances that provide food pantries and provide health care assistance, healthcare sharing plans like Christian Health Ministries, Samaritan Ministries. There's ways to do this. And I think it's a much better way than having, I agree with you. I don't want government officials telling me to do anything. But if I'm going to expect government officials to plunder other people's money and pay for whatever I do and the consequences of it, I give up some of my liberty then. I think it's only a fair trade.
Well, and then the debate comes into it that we heard on Capitol Hill very recently with the big, beautiful bill was, what about those people who genuinely need the assistance? And, is our Medicare, is our Medicaid, is our Social Security just going to go away? And that was a big debate on Capitol Hill, and we will probably hear the same thing when the Senate takes it up.
At a very granular level, you can't, like the priority, the system, people are going to manipulate it to their benefit. That's like innate, right? And so
why do we set up systems that are so manipulable? Why do we do that? Why do we do it?
I've seen it,
because politicians can buy favor with other people's money. It all started in the progressive era with the income tax. When you gave them a slush fund, then naturally they could say, hey, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do that for you. Just give me more money. I'll do more for you.
I'm super frustrated, right? I've stood in the doctor's office line, a long line waiting behind someone who was on assistance and their entire body was covered in tattoos. And I'm like, you probably have $10,000 worth of tattoos on your body and I'm paying for your health care. Now, granted, people have times in their life where they need assistance and it's out of their control. And so I don't know this person's situation.
Absolutely.
You try to have some grace. But, the same time, I know people, or I've known people who are on assistance, right? Government's paying for their groceries, government's paying for their childcare, government's paying for everything. And, grandma's paying for beautiful family photos. I'm like, well, can't grandma buy your groceries so I don't have to? We all make sacrifices, right? So I just, you can't legislate, force people to make smart choices, I guess.
I would be fine with that. So then here's what I would propose. You propose social Darwinism. You like survival of the fittest. So if you don't get a tetanus vaccine after you step on a nail because you don't like vaccines, and you get tetanus, and when you show up at the emergency room, should we say, show me your tetanus card? You don't have one. Sorry. Well, no, come on, follow it through. Be fair. Who pays for that emergency room visit that no one has the money to pay for, and they stepped on a nail and didn't get their tetanus vaccine?
Right. And
who pays for that? And why don't we who end up paying for that have some agency over that behavior? Or should we just let them die? I'm not going to let them die.
I'm not
of course not.
That's not the right policy. I'm just saying, how do
That's
you
survival of the fittest.
That?
The fittest would have gotten their tetanus shot.
I would like that system, but how do you implement that?
Let them die, according to you. Let them die.
Let them pay for their own health.
I don't think you should let people die.
Well, that's the point, though. Are you going to come at 3 o'clock in the morning and help me in the emergency room because of your idealistic libertarian ideas, Stephanie Bell? Come on, follow through. Come on.
I think that the world has weeds people out and like that who are poor decision makers. I would like to think that even with all of our flaws in our systems, that the world weeds people out who make poor decisions and rewards people who exercise personal responsibility.
All right. I just like to follow arguments to their logical, on-the-ground, granular conclusions. I think, Stephanie, you make a good point, right? We want to keep our rights and our liberties, but we have to be careful about responsibilities too. Those of us who exhibit responsibility, I think, sometimes forget that there's an awful lot of people who don't, and who's paying the bill. All right, when we come back, John, what's happening?
Talk about your granular conclusions. The rally squirrel is a Giants fan.
John's going to crush it when we come back. Cindy O'Loughlin at 8:08. Don't miss that.
This is Wake
During the Detroit Tigers against the San Francisco Giants game this week, when a squirrel ran onto the field at the start of the game. Squirrel ran onto the outfield Tuesday, Comerica Park, drawing the attention of FanDuel's announcers, Jason Benetti and Andy Dirks. You know, we like to stay on topic here, but squirrel. Squirrel dashed past baffled left fielder Riley Green before he made his way into the bullpen. Dirk said he's in the bullpen with the guys down there. Tyler Horton about came unglued. And he went on to say people think we don't say on subject, but literally first pitch, there's a squirrel. Tigers went on to win the game 3-1. But the real rally squirrel, as we all know, appeared on the field and ran across home plate at Busch back in the NLDS game with the Phillies. October 5th, 2011, and the Cardinals went on, thanks to the squirrel, to win the World Series that year. But a Giants-Tigers rally squirrel? Come on.
No.
And now you know the rest of that story.
Riley Green plays baseball? Hold on. You know who Riley Green is, Randy?
Mm-mm.
Come on, he's a country music artist.
Who?
Riley Green.
Riley Gaines?
Riley Green.
It was Riley Green with an E. Left fielder for the...
He sings like songs with Ella Langley.
Really?
Come on.
Ella Langley?
Yeah. Okay, Riley Green, the baseball player, is green like Green County. Riley Green, the country star, is green like the color. But Riley Green stirred up a whole lot of controversy because he's had this facial hair and like mustache for a long time, and he shaved it all off this week, and people are not happy.
No. Are you going to be unhappy?
I've never been he definitely looks better with the facial hair.
Well, I know you get all excited about Riley Green and Morgan Wallen, but going back to our generational translator on the slang-o-matic wheel, in case you missed it, you can catch it on the podcast later. I would say whoop-de-doo. Gen X would say whatever. What would millennials say?
We say whatever. I'm an older millennial, though.
Meh.
Yeah,
Meh.
that's fair.
And what does Gen Z say? Drake?
Mid.
You got it.
He
nailed it. Mid. I'm like, Riley Gaines, beard, whatever.
Riley
Green. Riley Gaines doesn't
not
have a beard.
That's like contrary to her whole thing.
No, that's right. No, Riley Green. Riley Green, sorry. I met Riley. I got my picture with Riley. Helene and I got our picture with Riley Gaines after her great speech at the Vitae Foundation. It was really a great dinner. She did a great speech.
She's impressive.
She got into a little bit of a flap on Twitter. Did you see that?
No.
Because Caitlin Clark, who's the Brittany Griner? Is that her name?
The one that we traded?
We traded to get her out of Russia, and we traded a espionage king or something. Okay, so apparently Brittany Griner had fouled out. She fouled out against someone else, not Caitlin Clark. And when she sat down on the bench,
she said something nasty.
Well, Riley Gaines said that she said something about that white something. Okay.
Yeah.
Or F that white something. Okay. Well, it turns out that maybe it was a bad call, and she was actually saying it was a bad call, but I forget the exact verbiage. And so no one really knows what she said, but it was an interesting thing. Riley and Brittany were going at it a little bit, got back.
She was definitely mad at the refs. I saw the clip.
You think it was just mad at the refs?
It was mad at the refs, yeah. But, I mean, either way, send her back to Russia. That's what I say. Send her back. Just, I don't even need anything in return.
Brittany does look very, she looks androgynized. She looks very masculine.
Androgynous.
Is
androgynized
androgynized would be would that be sort of an adverb, or would that be a adjective?
You got to consult
an
your
adjective.
lexicon wheel there.
My slang-o-matic.
There are some slang words for androgynized. Let's not use them on air, please.
Please.
I don't know. It just got me all ticked off. Gen X would say, I can't say the word, but it has to do with urination. Millennial, salty.
Yeah, salty.
And Gen Z, big mad, ticked off. And when we come back, Senator Cindy O'Loughlin, the upcoming special session, and her thoughts on stadium funding.
whose homes have been destroyed or damaged in this unfortunate series of weather that has touched almost every corner of this state.
Well, that was Governor Mike Keogh announcing the special session upcoming on Monday to deal with disaster relief and, of course, the more contentious issues of funding for projects that didn't get funded with HB 19 and the stadium funding project in Kansas City. Joining us to help us give us a preview on that special session is Senator Cindy O'Loughlin, the Senate President Pro Tem. And I hear you giggling in the background. I imagine it's not going to be real fun because there's going to be a lot of contentious discussion. No?
No. Yes. The problem with politics is politics. And, people can sort of grasp onto one thing or another. Some of these issues are pretty hot button issues. And, just listening to the governor again making that announcement, I thought, man, these are all big issues. I try to think about them one at a time.
Well, he talks about, funding a crime lab and funding a mental health inpatient facility. And I think things that most people would agree are probably laudable things. There's, of course, the more contentious issue of public funding for so-called billionaires and their enterprises, and we'll get into that. But what do you think about funding for some disaster relief, not only the tornadoes in St. Louis, but I imagine the recent floods in Springfield may have taken out a lot of homes or businesses. And so there are those needs. What's your general feeling on that as part of one of the agenda items?
Well, the governor has traveled extensively and it seems like repeatedly to all of these disaster areas because we've had so much flooding and so many tornadoes and just a lot of devastation. So if there's something that we can do that will have an impact, of course, we should look at doing it because there's a lot of people out there who've had a lot of damage. And if you, watch kind of the flooding in the Carolinas and that kind of thing, and if you're familiar with FEMA, I'm not a great big FEMA fan. A couple of years ago, I was working with Brunswick. They'd had a lot of flooding, and they had applied for FEMA money. And a couple of years later, it hadn't arrived yet. So that's kind of how I feel about FEMA.
Yeah, they're just so inefficient. You're right.
Now
they are. So the governor trying to help is a good thing.
Now, we've covered your comments on your Facebook page from earlier this week. That you are in support of the funding for the stadiums. I think yesterday / this morning it was announced that the Royals have confirmed they've bought the old Sprint campus in Overland Park. Their statement is that, sure, we've been engaging in negotiations for sites in both Missouri and Kansas. Of course, announcement just days from the special session. It feels like they're trying to put the pressure on you. Does this announcement change anything for you?
It kind of felt the same way to me that I thought, gee, this is pretty close to us going into session. But I understand that business deals can be made at any time. And I think that really everyone in the Senate and the House understands that maybe this is just part of what has to take place. I know that they probably make investments for other reasons, whatever makes a good business decision for them. So I try not to take it as, hey, look, we could be going here. I try to look at each item individually and take a, kind of a reasoned approach. So I don't try to guess why they've made certain investments.
Senator O'Loughlin, we have folks from the Show Me Institute on frequently here on the program, generally free market people. I think, a pretty well thought of conservative, think tank. And Peter Toohey was on recently with us, Brenda Talent on yesterday. And, basically the line is that when you look at least when some people do research on this and they look at the net economic benefit to a community from community support and taxpayer supported, enterprises like this, sports funding of sports facilities, they say it really doesn't benefit like people think, because if people have their recreational money and they'll just spend it somewhere else if there isn't a team there. They'll go bowling or they'll go to the movies rather than go to the football game. That's a condensed version. How do you process that argument, and what about the other side?
Well, I understand what they're saying, but you don't see people bowling on national TV. So I think what people tend to minimize is the overall cultural effect that having world-class teams can have on your state. Is it the same thing as saying, well, I'm going to take this money and invest it somewhere and try to get a 10% return? It's not that kind of a transaction. But what the teams are saying is, if we can keep some of the tax revenue that we generate to help pay off the loans that we would use to finance expansion, that would be something attractive to us and would help us make the decision that we have to make. So, there's a cultural aspect to it. Oftentimes when people upgrade their stadium, infrastructure then gets upgraded. I see their point about, well, you're just bringing people to participate in something here, where if that wasn't there, we could go somewhere else. But I think it really tends to overlook the actual effect the teams have. Like I tell people, you don't see people going to Nebraska. Mm-hmm. Well, why is that? A team like the Chiefs, 2 or 3 or 4 times Super Bowl champions over the years, being watched on national television, that's a draw for Missouri. One of the things that I think people don't consider, we had the NFL draft year that brought thousands of people into Missouri and millions of dollars. It's that kind of thing.
That's Senator Cindy O'Loughlin, President Pro Tem of the Senate. She'll be presiding over the special session. Well, not presiding, I guess, officially, but certainly making those consequential decisions around every bend as they are being made. Starting next Monday, she joins us on Wake Up Missouri.
Senator, we talk about the whole transactional thing and the deal with us versus the Kansans and all. What are you hearing from your colleagues on this? Are the votes there?
I don't know that they are there. I haven't called every senator and asked them. In my mind, I kind of think I know who would be a yes and who would be a no. There will be tremendous political pressure from all sides for people, and also from the governor. And so I guess we just have to see where it all shakes out. People who want to demagogue the issue, who want to say, well, these are billionaires, we should not allow them to have any kind of a tax incentive. Yesterday, I was kind of curious about the whole subject, since this is about all I think about for the last, 2 weeks. And I looked up sports authorities. Well, lo and behold, St. Charles has a sports authority. Joplin has a sports authority. They're not billionaires that own the place, but they are all financed publicly. They are all financed by either a direct payment from, taxpayers, or in part of the state money, so indirectly from the taxpayers. And they each use the argument that this helps bring people into our area who then frequent the restaurants, use the gas stations, travel across the state. So it isn't like this is an unheard of thing. It's just that it's a bigger thing and, easier to, as I say, demagogue.
Talk to us about the process, what we should expect next week. My understanding is these bills will go to committee. Has that been decided which committee they will go to? Are they going to different committees? And then what's the strategy for why the Senate is going to go first, as being reported?
Well, actually, I'm going to Jeff City today to kind of talk that over. I haven't decided what committees, they would go to. But on Monday, we would take the bills in, we would assign them to committee. Then, you have a process of having to wait. And so then the next day, the bills are heard in committee and then probably voted out that same day. Then come to the floor for discussion and debate and ultimately a vote.
So why is the Senate going first, though? Or is there a strategy there?
Well, I mean, the House has already passed a form of the stadium deal, so I guess we felt like, let's see how we fare in the Senate and what we can get done here, and then we'll send the package over, and then they can go through that same process.
Can I testify in the conference committee if it gets to that level and suggest that maybe we have a little, maybe the owners as a token of gratification to the taxpayers of Missouri say, hey, we'll reduce our bratwurst prices by 25%, and Coca-Cola will only cost $3 rather than $6. You think that'll get any legs? Maybe helping persuade a few senators. Little return on investment.
I think we're going to hear a lot of that anyway. So yes, absolutely. You're welcome to come in and give your opinion.
Oh yeah.
In my mind, I kind of know all the arguments that are going to be made.
Sure. But you're right. I mean, you think about it. We've had tax credits which is sort of a giveaway to rich guy kind of a theme, to movie makers and other people, right? I mean, it's sort of that's a precedent, right? And this is a higher profile example of government money going to business one way or another.
Well, we do provide incentives for a lot of different things, and I think the challenge is, you have to try to be sure, or try to, in your mind, determine that this is a net benefit for the people of Missouri. And that's what makes it difficult. And I think that, there are areas of spending where we could definitely dial it back. I know that there's, behind the scenes, those kinds of things are happening now. Mm-hmm. There are different department directors in some of the departments, and we are looking at ways to do things more efficiently and perhaps stop spending in some of the areas that we spend. So it's a complicated topic.
It is. And we're out of time this time, but you always have a wide open berth here and a platform on the radio, because it's important to hear your voice on this, Senator Cindy O'Loughlin. Thanks very much. Hopefully you'll join us during that session if there's any contention. We'd love to have you.
Oh, boy. Yes, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here. All right, well, there you go. That sets the table for what will be an interesting session. Interesting, maybe an understatement. Back with the Market Report and Stephanie at 8:24. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wake Up
Yesterday, they all closed in the red. The Dow down 0.58%, S&P down 0.56%, NASDAQ down 0.51%. Pretty consistent. We were waiting on NVIDIA earnings yesterday, which turned out to be good. We also saw Abercrombie stock be better than have better than expected earnings. If you're sleeping on Abercrombie, it was popular when I was a kid in the mall. It's totally made a comeback, whether you're my age or whether you got little kids. They have some great stuff.
Oh.
Anyway, so
that's
you should
interesting.
Check that out.
Yeah, I thought they were sort of going bye-bye. Oh.
I never, as a kid, we never could have, it just wasn't it wasn't something that we were allowed to buy.
If we could find it at TJ Maxx, they could have it. Sometimes you'd get the leftovers,
And I don't know that there was a TJ Maxx when I was a kid, but yeah, now you should check it out. And they have some good sales too. Anyway, some big news. Well, let's look at the sectors from yesterday. Yeah. Down pretty big was utilities, materials, and energy, but we are expecting a bounce back today. The futures last night were spiking up, but they're more moderated this morning. They all are in the green, and of course, a lot of that is to do with the court decision on Trump's tariffs. Of course, there was a federal special court that ruled that he doesn't really have the power to do what he's been doing with tariffs, which has caused a lot of volatility. So maybe reducing some of that volatility might give investors more confidence. A big announcement coming our way in St. Louis. It's all over Fox. It's making national news, but Dana White of the UFC is joining with Anheuser-Busch and First Form, PHORM. Are you familiar with First Form? We're going to talk about it. Everyone, of course, knows Anheuser-Busch, but they're joining together to come out with their own new energy drink. So they say it's going to have natural flavors and caffeine and help anyone unlock his or her full potential. And it's, of course, the can that I can see online that is the prototype is red, white, and blue with stars. Of course it is. And, Dana White's enjoying some pretty big popularity right now. There's comments in here from the First Form CEO saying how excited they are and how cool it is to join two St. Louis companies with Dana White to produce this. But yeah, First Form's actually they're like a nutrition company, and they're huge and they're based in St. Louis. I was
PHORM?
PHORM, correct. If you
They're not going to put a picture of Dylan Mulvaney on it, are they?
I don't think so. I found the architect's website that I guess transformed their facility. They actually take up the whole building at the former Chrysler plant in Fenton, is what they're saying.
Oh my,
it's a 185,000 square foot facility that has corporate offices and education and training auditorium, private library, 16 integrated Zoom rooms, multicast podcast studio, and a 16,000 square foot athletic facility and weight training room.
That huge facility was like a dinosaur sitting there, and now they're resurrecting it.
Well, they have, and they're a huge international company. And so having these three big players join together on an energy drink, and energy drinks are making, a huge comeback, especially among Gen Z.
Well, they'll certainly make you lit. I think this idea is just fire.
It's cool to see, a Missouri business announcement.
It is good, yeah.
Yeah.
Good to see some infusion of bucks there, yeah. When we come back, we've been talking about AI. Would you think about asking AI to look in the mirror, a mirror on the wall? That coming up at 8:35.
I think just local news is the most important stuff to me.
All right, wake up, family. We got to find out how many of you are using AI for subjective opinion kind of things. I mean, I think a lot of us use it for information, fact, sort of like Google on steroids, right? I wasn't aware of this, but some users, John Marsh, are using AI to, shall we say, enhance their attractiveness. Out of the Washington Post, this story about a woman that was feeling down on herself, Anya Rusinski. Apparently, friends were telling her that she's fine looking, but they were implying that she doesn't measure up to her boyfriend, who is a, quote, godlike hottie. Those same people would never tell her what she could do to look more attractive, she said. So what did she do? She uploaded a picture of herself and asked AI, what can I do to be more attractive? And apparently people are doing this and spending thousands of dollars.
And AI said, doctor the photo or the video you just posted.
I did it, and AI said, stay on the radio.
There you go.
Yeah. Got a face for radio, Randy. I tried. But AI was brutally honest. No, I mean, what they're doing is they're telling people, even specific, like use this hair dye, use that skin thing, do whatever. Isn't that interesting?
I've done it.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you adopted any of the suggestions? Would you like to share?
Not really.
Okay, moving along. How about those Chiefs?
You can just say like, how do I improve my appearance?
Yeah.
And I was wondering like if it would recommend, like if you're considering like medical spa treatments.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting.
It was pretty kind. I figured it would be kind of mean.
How do you do that? I mean, I know there's a microphone. How do you get stuff into AI?
There's a you just upload a photo.
Well, I'm not a big AI user. I use it like a little Google now and then.
You might have to have the paid version of ChatGPT.
Well, no, I'm not going to do that. Why do I need to
for
pay?
you. Let's do it. I'll do it right now.
No, you're not doing it.
Next segment. Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm totally going to do it.
That's not where this segment was going to go.
Oh, wait.
No,
we're going to do it.
The segment was not going to go here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk.
Want to bet?
Let's talk about that Mizzou ladies softball team, Drake Whitman.
Okay, well, if we're going to do personal shots, I'm siding with Stephanie. We're going to take a picture of you, or we're going to find a picture and upload it to AI. So stay tuned, guys. We will have the full analysis.
I'm looking at Grok, and I don't see anything here. I see a paper clip. Oh, wait. Is that where you would unload something? Oh, yeah, there's a file. So I could take and... Oh, I don't want to do this.
I said, what should I do to improve my appearance based on this photo? It said, I'd be happy to help. Upload your photo. And then it said, I could add color dimension to my hair. I could add more volume. It says it wants me to wear a slightly deeper colored lipstick.
Oh, interesting.
It said one of my outfits was better than the other based on my skin tone, that I should wear jewel tones, which I know already. It said I should wear a mid-sized statement earring. It also said one of my photos had bad lighting.
I'm just afraid if I try it, it's going to say like, hey, they're looking for someone to be the leading role in the sequel to Nicolas Cage's Face Off. You know that movie where he's a criminal? He's got a face mask. He uses.
I want his face off.
I want Marsh's or Whitman's face.
It's got like kids' gloves on because I said, should I change anything about my face? And then it goes through each thing, cheeks and mid-face, jawline and chin, lips, and it says what I see, and it tells you what it sees, and everything's very nice, but then it says, and suggestions. So it's not like, it's very kind.
It's not like,
I think it's...
give it up, go to buy an island off of Tahiti. And move there.
Sell all the mirrors in your house.
But it's very specific. It says, what I see, your skin already looks healthy and radiant, especially in the second photo. So it's like, it looks at it. It's nice.
Rob says, AI told me to be an actor, recommended Slog from the Goonies.
We are going to, Randy, we'll just do it right here, right now. And then I'll
you
have
don't have
to let
a photo
it process.
of me, do you?
Oh, I'm about to.
Well, you may have a touched up photo.
I think it's
like
helpful if you're thinking like, what could I do? And I think you can even put in like a budget. Like, what could I do low budget that could improve my appearance?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing. Smile for the camera.
There you go.
All right, here we go.
All right.
Goonies never say die, Randy. Remember that.
I know. Jackie, talking about our 573-874-9390. If you've ever done that, and I'd be curious, what did AI tell you? Going back to our segment with Cindy O'Loughlin, and I've invited her back on if she has the time and wants to talk about what topics we didn't get into, which was HB 19, which is that bill that the House didn't pass that had all of the various funding for like the nuclear reactor to help with medicinals and both diagnostic and therapeutic pharmaceutical agents that are radioactive produced in the Mizzou nuclear reactor that's proposed. And what else? The mental institution in Kansas City, right, John? I think that was one of them.
Yeah, mental health hospital.
And wasn't there a law enforcement training? Was it a training facility, I think, as well? Something. There was a law enforcement facility. But then there's a myriad of projects. And so if she has the time and is willing to come on, I'd like to have her on to talk about that as the session progresses. But once the session starts next week, it's going to be really interesting. Many of you have projects in your area that probably were thought, it's going to be part of a big number of bills, and as they go through, they pass them, and it'll get passed. And it didn't happen. And a lot of hurt feelings on the Senate side, certainly. So we'll have to see, where it goes. John, look, if we're going to do my face on AI, we need to do yours.
Uh-oh.
We need to do the
Watch
same
what
thing.
you wish for.
Yeah.
It'll say that it's perfect. Don't worry.
Just get ready. It says your co-host already presents a warm and professional appearance. That said, if he's looking to elevate his look, here are some constructive suggestions.
I'm not sure I want to hear this. Can we cut to break?
It just demoted you to co-host, Randy.
Can we cut to break? What's it say?
Right now?
Yeah, I'm ready.
It says, shirt, fit, and fabric. It doesn't like your shirt.
What's wrong with my shirt?
It says, the current shirt is classic and clean, but consider switching to a non-iron, more structured fabric to reduce visible wrinkles. It asks you to add a blazer. A well-fitted blazer can add polish without looking too formal. The current tie is conservative. A slightly bolder...
Thank you. This is John. It's like an RFK tie.
A
nice
slightly
and skinny.
bolder pattern or color can give more visual interest on camera, and slightly larger knot, like a half Windsor, may project more presence. It thinks your knot's too small.
I'm sorry.
Back to the four in hand, right?
Bruh. I can't even. As if.
It says, slight grooming of your eyebrows or edge cleanup, if desired, can sharpen your look. A slight blotting towel on your forehead for camera work.
Yeah. I know.
Is desired.
I was once told on a TV shot when I was doing more TV in the 90s that, you know what they do? They take a little like toilet paper and just sort of blot your head. And that does a good job of at least quickly without makeup.
Yeah.
Instead of using AI, you should have used Mark Alford and got his sneaky
right.
TV tips.
I was going to say, or LG. We have a professional photographer in-house, and he always tells me I'm too shiny.
When Drake wants to hurt me, he will always say, Randy, turn the shine off of your head. He hurts me.
It does say that for expression and posture, his smile and posture are great.
Oh, there you go.
Look at you.
I don't have eyebrows. I don't know what happened. What happened to my eyebrows?
Me too. That's why I have the tattoos.
Oh, should I get tattooed eyebrows?
No,
I'm not doing that.
You could
get them, and Rand, even when you were tired, you'd look surprised.
Was it Ron Paul who had the toupee eyebrows that during the debate it started crawling down his face like a caterpillar? Don't do that either.
Yeah, I'm not
toupee eyebrows.
All right. Well, you had some fun with me. That's okay. I could take it.
It was like kind.
It was kind.
And I think
it was,
help, like if you're really looking for like tweaks around the edges, use ChatGPT.
What's interesting is one of the things that I think, tell me guys out there who are hair challenged, is that not one of your most self-conscious things? Something
Women
about the hair.
too.
Yeah, I just really, but I think women, I understand that.
I think it's worse for women.
Men just naturally go bald, and so they shouldn't worry about it.
Yeah,
but we do.
But I think
but women, it is a big deal. I understand.
I think it's worse for women.
Yeah. Maybe it just didn't have the courage to say anything about that. But I tell you, bald is much better than a bad toupee, or probably any toupee. You've seen these guys that look like they put a mop on their head. I mean, it's just
Heidi
bad.
Montag, you remember her? She was like on like original reality. She's like my generation.
Mm-hmm.
She wore a wig to the CMAs and she looked like weird Barbie.
Yeah.
I mean, it was bad.
Let me ask you. Okay, Will Smith's wife. She has a medical condition, I think, and
she looks beautiful. Bald.
Okay, then there's is it Ayanna Presley? Is she one of the squad is totally bald? But aren't some women doing that as a fashion statement, or can we assume it's usually just an extension of a medical problem?
I think
do you
both.
know?
I think
both?
I think some people choose it.
Yeah.
And then I mean, and wigs are kind of making a comeback.
Yeah.
Kelsey Ballerini just announced to a lot of people's shock that this entire tour, her long blonde locks were a wig, and she just said my hair's taken a beating with all the styling and everything else, and it's just and she went through some personal things and it was falling out, and she said we decided to save my natural hair and do a wig.
Wow. And then
I like that people are being more open and transparent about, because you look at her and you're like, I'd do anything for hair like that, and knowing now like that's not even her hair, right? Like I think it's helpful to know like my hair's never going to look like that, and because that's not her hair either, right?
Rob says, hell no, bro. Peel your grape if you're going bald. Just let it go. My daughters, once in a while, they look at me and say, I got this little tuft on top, you know? They'll say, Dad, it's time. And I'm like, no, I'm clinging on to every last follicle as long as I can.
The important thing, though, like what people are learning now is like men should really start taking care of their hair when they're 30.
It's true.
Because
And skin. You
can't like regrow it. So if you want to keep your hair and it's like it's genetic, you really have to start before you even notice the hair loss.
Yeah, you're right. No, that's true. All right. Well, that wasn't as painful as I feared it was going to be, Stephanie. I thought it was going to be really painful. All right. Well, that was fun. When we come back, we'll do the leftovers on Wake Up Missouri. Stay tuned.
This is Wake Up Missouri.
It's time for that segment of the show when we talk about the leftovers. So much to say, so little time every Monday through Friday on Wake Up Missouri from 6 to 9. John, what's on your leftover pile?
Well, as Steph would know, England has the London Eye, so get ready for the Ashland Wheel. Lakeside Ashland announcing plans are going to build a large Ferris wheel at their complex and say they're looking for a partner to cover the cost of building the wheel and advertising thereon.
They've really been adding a lot to that property. After the screen, they added a really nice playground, and then they added the zip line, which my kids have ridden, which was really cool. They've got sand volleyball out there now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're. I mean,
it is quite an attraction.
Swimming beach, don't they go on that route?
Yeah, there's a beach down by where the sand volleyball is, and it goes into a lake, I'm pretty sure. So
wow.
So I kind of like it because, especially if you have little kids, you know, having the playground and some other things for them to kind of do while you're wanting to watch a movie, like the whole family can have fun.
It was so fun. We went out there for a movie when the grandkids were in, and next thing you know, there were a couple of youngsters, you know, 2 cars down. And we were enjoying the movie, and the oldest grandkid took up acquaintance with another kid, and they were playing, you know. We kept an eye on them, and it was fun. I mean, it's a really great atmosphere out there at Lakeside Ashland. So it's growing. When is that slated to open, John? Did they say?
No, they didn't indicate, but they're looking for a partner now. So if you're a business out there and you want to partner up with the Lakeside Ashland Wheel, it's your perfect opportunity.
Wow.
One other note on the Amendment 3 issue, I think we reported yesterday that the Supreme Court had issued that writ ordering Judge Jung to vacate her orders, and she actually did do that yesterday, vacated her original orders.
She did,
yes.
Yeah, I think that Ferris wheel would be fire.
I'm not a heights girly. I don't love a Ferris wheel.
You don't like that?
No, I did not go on the zip line. I sent my kids.
No. So I bet you didn't like it when you were on the Ferris wheel and you're up at the very top and they stop it.
Oh, no, thank you.
You're just slowly swinging.
No, I remember walking into my youngest kindergarten class, and the first story out of her mouth to her teacher was how we had just been to Silver Dollar City, and Mom went on those swings, and she said a lot of cuss words.
Oh.
I don't.
Really?
I don't know that thing that's where you're like, it raises up and it's got the swings and you're swinging.
Just on a chain. Oh, I love that.
No way.
The centrifugal force device. Oh, that's
wonderful.
wonderful.
I will never get on one of those
It's
again.
a science lesson.
Yeah.
Drake, you don't like that?
No, I hate roller coasters. I can't stand them.
For a minute, like they were all in the height buckets to where with 3 of them, we all had to ride, like, because 2 of them needed an adult. And so I had it was pure torture for me. Otherwise, we had to stand in too many lines. And so I just closed my eyes and prayed.
I love those coasters where you're locked in by the shoulders and they take you upside down. The Batman. What an awesome ride. And the other one, the last good coaster, one of the last good, down at Silver Dollar City, they had that, what's it called, the shotgun or something? You go from like 0 to, full speed in half a second. It's amazing. Love those G-force rides.
What's that?
What's a rickety one?
SDC.
Yeah, what's a rickety one at Worlds of Fun?
Screaming Eagle?
The one that's wooden.
Yeah, there's a
Screaming Eagle.
Timberwolf. And there's a wooden one at Silver Dollar City and at, I think, Six Flags. Ugh. But it is about to be fair season, so in case you're not scared enough by those roller coasters that are there year round, wait for the ones that pop up after 2 days.
What do you have?
So I remember the first, and not the last, but basically the last roller coaster I went on. We went to Six Flags, and my mom was like, "Oh, come with me on the wooden roller coaster." I don't know what it was called, but it was like one of the super crazy ones. I think it might have been the Timberwolf or something like that. But that thing is scary, especially as a kid. Oh my gosh, I don't like roller coasters because of it. Yeah, no, I'm not a puker, but
and if you
Screaming Eagle at Worlds of Fun at Six Flags, I think, isn't it?
I think that's right.
So if you have to ride a coaster, do you prefer to be in the front car, the back, or somewhere in the middle?
Middle.
I love the front. I
would.
I love that feeling of like nothingness, the deep cavern.
Have you ever been skydiving?
No. I don't know that.
Sounds like a job for your daughters.
I don't know. We'll have some tea on that one after the show.
You need to stop.
You're fired, Doc.
Got me lit, baby. All right, we're having a lot of fun. Tomorrow will be Feel Good Friday. We'll have some more fun then. Hope you join us on Wake Up Missouri. Have a great one.
Bye.